Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Broken Demon by Dante St. John, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1, Andromeda. It was 2 in the morning, and there was a man hanging in a dungeon cell waiting for me. I was cranky and tired. I'd gotten dragged out of bed for this. I had been happy and comfortable under a pile of blankets, having a particularly nice dream involving 7 gorgeous pirates, a deserted island, and a shipping crate of sex toys when someone poked me awake to inform me that my special set of skills was required. Immediately. Since I was the island's feared inquisitor, I didn't have any option but to haul my sleep-deprived carcass out of bed and make my way downstairs. My job was to question the bad guys, no matter what time it was. I chugged a quick energy drink while I threw on my work clothes and listened to the admin give me the rundown. The prisoner's name is Gregory, no last name that we've been able to get out of him. He's a shifter of some sort, but we haven't been able to determine what flavor yet. James, our incredible admin, kept his back politely turned towards me while I pulled on a pair of tight black shorts and a matching tank top. My slight frame meant I didn't have to spend a lot of money on fancy bras, and I was forever grateful for that. I took another swig of my drink and rolled my head from side to side in a slow stretch. I needed to get my sluggish blood flowing again. I ran through a series of stretches and short burst exercises to help me wake up while I listened to James. My brain was still foggy with sleep, but movement helped, and the sweet, life-giving caffeine would kick in soon. We captured Gregory during a recent raid on a supernatural party suspected of being a cover for a trafficking auction. Were we right, or did we just piss off a bunch of monsters? I asked as I slid my feet into comfy slippers. I wouldn't need shoes for what I was doing, so I didn't plan on wasting my time lacing up feet prisons. I'd take the bunny slippers off before I entered the cell. I was a professional, after all. James continued. Oh, we were not wrong. There was a group of 7 humans being held in what used to be the meat locker of an abandoned restaurant. The raiding party was able to extract the humans with no additional collateral damage. Several shifters escaped, however. Gregory was the only one we could capture alive. Laws in the post-breaking world were sketchy at best. Humans kept trying to enforce them, but what were you going to do when a 7-foot-tall vampire decided he didn't like your rules? There wasn't a whole lot to be done there. But it luckily left us free to do whatever we needed to do to keep people as safe as possible. Our methods weren't exactly friendly. Humanity was still trying to recover from the end of the world 20 years ago. The breaking essentially threw us back into the Dark Ages. Technology crashed in its entirety. Cars, computers, phones, hell, even lights stopped working all at once. Then, alternate realities collided, and all the monsters from our nightmares suddenly lived on the same planet as us. It had been a clusterfuck ever since. And I had the dubious pleasure of working for a company of mercenaries specifically trained in countering supernatural bullshit. What am I trying to get out of our guest? I asked. The rescued humans said that a family was taken but not recovered in the raid. No one knew their names, though. The family's comprised of a mother, a father, and 2 children, a girl and a boy. Ages unknown. We need to know who and where they are. They've likely been sold already, so we need to know who their buyer was. We know the shifters were facilitating the sale, but the bidding was open to all variety of supernatural, so basically we have no idea where the family could have gone. James grimaced as he opened my door to let me through, and I grabbed my earbuds and phone on the way out. We had finally gotten a lot of tech working again, but it could be spotty, especially when magic was running high. In some areas, technology didn't work at all. In others, magic didn't work. Music might be the best thing we recovered. I couldn't do my job without it. It was a relatively short walk to the winding stairs that led to the dungeon. It was easier to just keep me close by for quick interrogations. I thanked James for the info and ducked into the low-ceilinged stairway. We didn't know where the castle we used as our headquarters came from. It had just appeared after the breaking, but it certainly hadn't been designed for people who were much taller than me. I was the only one of our group who didn't have to stoop to go down the smooth stone passage. At the base of the stairs, the space opened into a wide hallway with cells on either side. 6 cells total. Directly in front of me, a lanky man hung suspended from a hook in the ceiling just outside of his cell door. His hands stretched above his head, his feet barely touching the floor. Blonde hair hung in damp clumps across his face. His face was bloody, and it looked like someone had already tried to question him. Unfortunately for us, supernaturals are insanely strong and have the endurance of a brick wall. A human could throw everything they had at something like a vampire or a shifter and never make a dent. Not to mention a supernatural's regenerative speed. If we did any damage to a supernatural, they'd heal within minutes, seconds if they were old or strong enough. It made questioning them extremely difficult. We had to use special tranquilizers to keep them sedated for any length of time. And they could metabolize that faster than we were happy with. No one else was in the hall with us. The guards had likely already moved out to give me space. I kicked my slippers into a corner and immediately regretted it as my feet touched the cold floor. Icy pinpricks skittered up from my soles, making me grit my teeth. "Hello, Gregory," I said to the man suspended in front of me. "I'm the Inquisitor, and I have a few questions for you." Gregory's head jerked up at that. I had a bit of a reputation. Not a good one. Now and then, if I was very lucky, mentioning that I was the infamous Inquisitor was enough to make the monsters talk. I had become something of a boogeyman in the supernatural world. "If you prefer, we can skip the next bit and just get right to the part where you can tell me all about the missing human family. Then I can go back to bed and you can do whatever it is my boss wants to do with you." I shrugged. A low growl rumbled from his throat. "Guess I'm not sleeping tonight then," I grumbled as I did one last big stretch and put my earbuds in. I'd already queued up the right playlist on my phone, so I just had to hit play. Loud rock music from pre-breaking started pounding in my ears, drowning out the rest of the world. I took a deep breath and took a half step away from Gregory. His mouth was moving. He was probably trying to say something. I did a quick sideways sliding step towards him, and my foot shot out, hitting him in the solar plexus. Without waiting, I whipped the same leg back up and a kick to his rib, striking hard enough that I felt something crack inside him. My foot dropped back to the ground, and I brought my hands up in front of my face, fists loose, my right foot setting a half step behind the left. My right arm came across my body, and I punched him squarely in the nose. Bone shattered and blood sprayed. I followed that with a hook from my left hand that caught him in the jaw, snapping it out of place. I could see his nose already knitting back together. A quick regeneration time meant he was likely old and most assuredly powerful. The music continued to pound in my ears. I rolled my head and bounced on the balls of my feet a little. Then I dove back in with a flurry of blows that sent more blood flying. I felt another rib crack under my fist. Small sparks of blue-white light glittered out around my hand. Tiny singe marks burned into his skin. "There you are," I thought. "Now we're warmed up. Let's play." Another series of blows, and the sparks turned to lightning, glowing larger and brighter. I didn't have to see myself to know that my normally brown eyes were glowing a vibrant electric blue. Small sparks dripped from the corners of my eyes. Gregory had stopped healing at some point. His breathing grew rough. I stepped back and brought my rear leg up and around to take out his knee. The song in my ears was ending. Gregory's mouth was moving again. I pulled one earbud out, the music automatically pausing. "What?" I asked. "Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Did you need to tell me something?" Gregory growled and made some threats about his pack leader coming for me. Blah, blah, blah. I shrugged and popped the earbud back in. Track 2. It took 14 songs for the wolf shifter to break. Supernatural creatures could live for a ridiculously long time and were incredibly powerful. They pretty much all had crazy fast healing abilities, so humans weren't anything but annoyances to them. But when you've never really felt intense pain before, the sudden shock of it is enough to drive you mad. My lightning temporarily shuts down supernatural powers. It would take weeks for the wolf to heal. Faster than a human, but so much slower than he would be used to. During that time, he'd be the special guest of the island. Afterwards, I honestly didn't want to know what would happen. Nothing good. Nausea churned in my stomach, and my head pounded like the music was still playing. My skin felt prickly all over, and my muscles jittered and twitched. Fucking exhaustion and caffeine. All I wanted was to throw myself back into my bed and sleep for 3 days, but I had blood all over me. I still had to go debrief my boss. The session had been recorded like usual, but the boss always insisted on receiving an in-person update from me just so that I could share any thoughts I had on the information. I could occasionally provide insights that didn't come across on the recordings. James, my freaking hero, was waiting at the top of the stairs holding a towel, a water bottle, and a huge chunk of fresh bread from our kitchens. I could have kissed that man with tongue, and maybe done a little more. The carbs would help me keep me from crashing too badly when the caffeine and adrenaline wore off. I gratefully took the towel and wiped the worst of the blood from my face. A full shower would be necessary before I got back to bed. I chugged the water and shoved a massive chunk of the bread into my mouth. The bread was still warm, with a fluffy inside and perfectly toasty outside. I may have made some fairly sexual noises while I ate. Don't judge. I thanked James and made my way up the 2 flights of stairs and down the long hall toward the boss man's office. Dim lights inset into the walls did little to combat that pre-dawn blackness coming through the windows that lined the hall leading to my supervisor's suite. Duncan wasn't bad so far as bosses went. He was a decent guy who legitimately wanted to keep the world safe. I didn't envy him his job. Inside the office, Duncan sat in a chair next to the fireplace instead of in his normal spot behind the desk. He looked just as tired as me and probably had gotten even less sleep than I had. His shaggy gray hair hung down around his face, and shadows under his eyes made him look hollowed out. His head came up when I entered. "Andy," he said, "what can you tell me?" I sat down in the chair opposite him and pulled the throw off the back of it to wrap around myself. The caffeine and adrenaline were crashing with a sudden intensity that nearly knocked me on my ass. I wasn't the biggest fan of my job on the best of days, but right then I especially disliked it. I never planned for my life to end up in such a violent, bloody mess, but there weren't a lot of options for people like me. During the breaking, I became other. My power was easy to hide now, but during the chaos of those first few years, I had little control over it. And when a kid was left fighting for their life on a daily basis, a skill like mine came to light pretty quick. So I did my job because it paid well, and because if I could help even one person, one kid like I had been, escape the terror that I went through, then it was worth it. First thing of note, our guy's name is not Gregory. Whoever got that info was wrong. It's Grigory, specifically Grigory Antonev. I paused and took a drink of water while I waited to see if Duncan understood the problem we were facing. Did we just interrogate a member of one of the largest shifter packs in the world? Yep, he totally understood. Point for Duncan. There was a massive pack of shifters that lived primarily in the area that used to be Eastern Europe. The Antonov family was a rough group of wolf shifters who had bred with humans. They were the muscle of the pack. The pack comprised several flavors of shifters: wolf, bear, big cat, rat, and whatever else an individual could shift into. The pack was very open with their enrollment. If they'd shift and be useful, they'd find a home for you. So yeah, we had just interrogated a member of a shape-shifting crime family. I really hoped Grigory was just somebody's dumb nephew or something, and not someone to be missed. Got the names of the missing adults, Eli and Echo, male and female respectively. Ages unknown, but guessed to be in their mid to late 20s. Eli is described as roughly 5 feet 9 inches with a wiry build, pale skin with a shaggy black hair and blue eyes. He wore a top hat, but otherwise dressed like he had robbed a thrift store. Eli was also stated to be, and this is a direct quote, intensely annoying. Echo, the female, also approximately 5'9", with similar coloring, pale skin, black hair, brown eyes. She uses a walking cane and was last seen wearing what appeared to be a blue Victorian-era gown, bustle and all. Echo was the quiet one and only spoke to Eli. I got the impression that our dear Grigory was hoping Echo wouldn't sell so he could keep her. He would have gladly put a bullet through Eli, though. Unfortunately, I continued after taking another drink of my water, no useful information was forthcoming about the missing children. At best, I can tell you they are young, definitely under 10, confirmed a boy and girl. Grigory was not especially interested in them. I pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders. A deep chill was settled into my bones, and the fire wasn't helping as much as I would have liked. I desperately needed to soak in a hot bath and then fall into my bed. No one should bother me for at least 3 days. Do we have any idea who they were sold to, where they could have been taken? Duncan rubbed his forehead and closed his eyes. His job was much harder than mine. He had to take all the information I gave him and plan something useful with it. I was immensely glad my job stopped at the dungeon stairs. Grigory was certain they weren't sold. Multiple attempts were made with Echo, but Eli interfered and the sale was halted each time. That was one of those times where Eli was annoying. I was fascinated that Grigory, a man undergoing torture, could spend enough energy to let me know just how much one human captive pissed him off. I wanted to meet Eli. He sounded fun. So essentially, we have no idea where four humans who were being trafficked have got to. Duncan looked less than pleased. I couldn't really blame him. It wasn't a great situation. Seems like it. I need to find someone else who was involved. Somebody has to know something. I knew I was stating the obvious, but frankly, I was too tired to form a more coherent thought than that. Duncan sighed. Go get some sleep, Andy. We'll see what we can find. Stay local for the next few days. We may need you again. I nodded and stood up. My eyes felt scratchy and I couldn't get warm enough. I didn't bother to say goodbye when I walked out of the room and closed the heavy wood door behind me. I made it back to my room and practically fell into my shower, turning the water on as hot as it could go. The water hit my skin like daggers as I sank down to the shower floor. My blood-spattered clothes clung to me under the spray of the water, and I belatedly realized I was supposed to take those off before getting in the shower. I don't know how long I sat like that before I finally struggled my way out of my shorts and tank top to give myself a cursory wash. Warmth slowly seeped into me, and I watched as the last thin red stream circled the drain and disappeared. The old pipes made a loud thunk when I shut the water off. I grabbed the towel hanging on a hook on the wall next to the shower and roughly scrubbed myself dry, then dropped the towel on the floor. Putting things away neatly could wait until tomorrow. I barely made it back to my bed. I crawled into the middle under a pile of blankets so soft I was certain they were magical items. Exhaustion claimed me before I finished pulling the blankets over myself.